everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to our webinar. Today we're going to talk about credit, credit tricks. Or happy St. Patrick's Day yesterday. And when we were thinking about, what to talk about today as a team, we thought, well, how do we protect that pot of gold? So that's what was on our minds when we were putting this presentation together. So today we are actually going to talk about how to protect your credit. So my name is Jervy. I'm one of the two program coordinators for the Empowering Financial Wellness program. Joining me today is one of the two. So I'm one, and then my partner is Vincenza. You're going to be hearing from her today as well. We also have here today joining our discussion is Alicia. She's our intern. She's wonderful, and she's an amazing intern that we have in the program. And we also have Kirsty Lynn joining us today. She's our program manager. I'm swapping words today. I'm really sorry, but she's a member of our team, and she'll be in the chat today. And whenever you have questions during our presentation, she'll be in there. She'll be answering any questions that you might have. This webinar is brought to you by our program, the Empowering Financial Wellness program, in partnership with Utah State University Extension and the Department of Workforce Services. So like I said, today we are going to talk about credit tricks. And we are going to cover three things. Okay, how to protect yourself from identity theft and fraud. Of course, we want to make sure that our credit is protected, how you can prevent those things from happening, and then how to check your credit report and what it indicates. Okay, so there's 3 reports that you can pull, and they don't all look the same. And sometimes it's intimidating to look at them and try to understand what those things that are reported on there mean exactly, and what it means for you, for your financial life. So we're going to go through a sample credit report, and we're going to tell you what those things mean. And we're also going to talk about freezes and locks for your credit. And we're going to talk about that at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to give the time now to Alicia, and she's going to start us off with the presentation. But before I forget, if you could put in the chat, if you haven't already, introduce yourself and where you're joining us from. We would love to know where you are joining us from. So Alicia, take it away.
Alrighty, to start off with, we are going to have a poll to kind of see where you guys are as far as your knowledge about some of the topics we're going to be going over. So the first question you'll see in the poll, these are all true and false questions, do you have to be a victim of identity theft in order to request a freeze on your credits? True or false? Okay, and then it looks like some people are already starting on the second question, but the second question is going to be checking your credit report will affect your credit score. True or false? And then question number 3, a credit freeze and a credit lock are the same things. And we would love it if everybody could participate with us in this poll, just so we can see where everyone's at. And then the last question is, children can be victims of identity theft. Is that true or false? We'll give you maybe another minute for people to answer the questions. Looks like we're still waiting on maybe a couple more people. Okay, it looks like on some of them we're kind of 50-50 and some of them are pretty lumped together on one side of the spectrum. We'll maybe wait maybe like 10 more seconds or so. Alrighty, thank you guys for your participation. It looks like we've got 100% of you have participated with us. And we are currently sharing the results. So on question number 1, you have to be a victim of identity theft in order to request a freeze on your credit. It looks like almost all of you got that one correct. That one was false. And so as of September of 2018, anyone can request a freeze on your credit for free. Congress mandated free freezes in response to consumer outrage from an Equifax breach that exposed the personal information of more than 146 million Americans. And so now that is a service that can be requested for free. Alrighty, so number 2, it looks like we were pretty well split on this one. Checking your credit report will affect your credit score. So that one, it looks like, is actually false. When you yourself checks your credit score or your credit report, it counts as a soft inquiry on your credit report. And so the soft inquiries that we've mentioned before in previous webinars, those ones are when either you check your credit report or if it's like a credit card company that's pre-approving you and sending you something in the mail, then that one is a soft inquiry and those don't affect your credit score. If you go out and you're shopping around with lenders to get like a car loan or a mortgage or any other type of new credit, then those are considered hard inquiries or hard pulls on your credit report, and those ones will negatively impact your credit score. But like we've talked about in the past, that's not the biggest impact on your credit score though. And then number 3, it looks like everybody got that one correct, that a credit freeze and a credit lock are not the same things. And as we go throughout this presentation or throughout this webinar, we will be talking about the differences between credit locks and credit freezes. And then lastly, children can be victims of identity theft. It looks like everybody got that one correct as well. So good job, everybody. It is a very unfortunate reality that children, even though they don't file taxes and most of them don't have credit cards, they are 35 times more likely to be victims of identity theft compared to adults, which is pretty sad. But the fact that young children don't have credit gives criminals a longer time period between using the stolen information and the crime actually being discovered. So children are targeted a lot more highly than adults, which is so sad. And so it's so important that if you have kids, that even if they don't have credit, that you check their credit report with them or for them to make sure that that same thing is not happening to them. Because it'd be so sad that when they go to open their first credit card, they're like, oh, wow, all these other bad things have happened on my credit report already. So now I have these bad terms or not as beneficial terms on their credit card. And like Vincenza said, you can also freeze credit for the children under 16 as well, which is a great thing to keep in mind. Okay, we are going to continue on. And first of all, we're going to start off by talking about identity theft protection and monitoring. And so it can provide you alerts for quite a few different things. And so first of all, it can alert you if there's ever a change of address request filled out and submitted for you. Also, court arrest records as well. So if there's someone that's being arrested under your name, then you'll get an alert about that. And then also orders for new utilities and other services. And then payday loan applications. So if you get an alert saying that someone applied for that you just applied for a payday loan, and you're like, what? I didn't do that. Then you may want to contact the credit bureaus and let them know that something is happening. And then also contact the place that the payday loan is from. You can contact the police as well so that you can get a police report about these different things as well. And then identity theft protection can also provide an alert for check cashing requests. And then also social media impersonation, and then the presence of your name in the dark web. And so this would be any websites that identity thieves use to trade stolen information. I'm putting an using identity theft protection and monitoring is the best way to help prevent identity theft, is to sign up for one of these services. And although identity theft protection cannot prevent with 100% certainty that your identity won't be stolen, it will at least let you know when these different activities are occurring, so that you know that fast that something is happening that's a little bit fishy or a little suspicious, so that you can take care of things a lot more quickly compared to if you just waited until the next time that you checked your credit report. And then continuing on with a little more about identity theft protection, victims of a data breach can place a free fraud alert on their credit report, which informs lenders or any other creditors to contact the identified individuals directly before opening any new accounts. So if you have this fraud alert on your credit report, they will contact you directly before they open any new loans or any other forms of credit. And so then you can verify whether that's actually you that's doing it or if it's somebody else that is being fraudulent. And then companies do offer free credit monitoring services when your information with them may have been compromised. And sometimes this is a requirement because of what happened, or because of what they didn't do to protect your information, whether it's a store or if it's one of the credit bureaus or any other credit card companies or any other lenders, really. They may either do it because it's a requirement because of what happens, or also just because they want to protect their name, but it's a service that many of them will do for free to help you out. And these credit monitoring services check databases and collect different types of information to see if they contain any new or inaccurate information about you, any things that seem out of the ordinary. So if you're all of a sudden getting an alert about getting a new car loan and you've never gotten a car loan in the past, then you may get an alert for that. And so 1.4 million incidents of identity theft were reported to the Federal Trade Commission in 2020, which is pretty crazy. That is double from 2019. Now, this is something that we wanted to talk a little bit more about because it's such a problem. It's so prevalent right now. And we want you guys to know about the different resources that are out there to help you. Anytime there's any sort of pandemic or any sort of hardship, identity theft is on the rise and it skyrockets. because the different scammers or identity thieves, they want to take advantage of people when they are having a hard time and they're seeking any type of help, or really they're just overwhelmed by all the other different things that are happening in their lives and in the world right now that they may not think of checking their credit reports. So they're like, well, they won't even notice for quite a while and I'll be able to get away with a lot before it's even noticed. Um, and so putting an identity theft protection or a monitoring service out there that you use can really help you in protecting your identity. And if you do this, something else that we want you to know about is that if you put a fraud alert on your credit report, then you will have to likely contact all three of the credit bureaus. Sometimes they will communicate amongst each other to get that information across, but sometimes you will have to contact all three of them just to make sure that your bases are all covered. And if there is ever a possibility that your information has been stolen, then you should receive a letter from a company that your information may have been compromised due to a data breach. And then they will usually let you know that they are offering you these different services for free. And so hopefully from this webinar right here, we're hoping that you'll walk away with the tips, the tools and knowledge that you need so that you hopefully aren't a part of the 1.4 million people that report having identity thefts. And so now Vincenza is going to talk a little bit more about some other areas where we can protect our identity, especially this time of year.
Yes, and I just wanted to go back on, I see that Mary had a great question and Christy-Lynn addressed it, but it's a good point. You know, she asked, how do you feel about the monitoring company having access to your information? Couldn't it be another route to problems? But like everything else that we do with when we work with companies that have access to our information, they are bound by law to protect our information, and there will be criminal consequences as, you know, a result of that. So, but like Christy-Lynn said, you know, do your research. And I personally have identity theft protection because I had my bank account hacked into a few years ago. And that's something that I wouldn't have been able to tell from my credit report. It's just because I started seeing money coming out of my checking account that I didn't know what it was for. So I just wanted to mention that, but it's a good point, and it's just something that it's a personal decision that you have to make with good faith and feeling comfortable with it. And then the second thing is, you know, about you know, how Alicia mentioned, you know, 1.4 million people were victims of identity theft. Those are only people that are actually reporting it. I would suspect that there are a lot more people that have experienced it, but don't know how to report it or where to, or don't even realize it. And then the other thing that she mentioned about, you'll get a letter from a creditor or company. I don't know if any of you remember with that Equifax data breach. I mean, it wasn't disclosed to us until months later. So that time between when it actually happens and when you get notified, there could be a lot of damage done. So that's just something else to take into consideration when you're thinking about identity theft protection. And unfortunately, a lot of times we don't find out about it till after the fact, but these are all things that we're sharing with you that could just help you be extra vigilant. And the quicker you can detect it, then the less damage that can be done. So I had to actually shut down my bank account. I had to change everything. It was a hassle, but if you have an identity theft monitoring company, they help facilitate all of that for you. And usually there's some dollar amount that they would cover in the event, you know, you were held liable for some things that were purchased or charged without you knowing about it. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about ways to protect, some ideas for protecting your identity. And one of the first things that we thought about, because it's tax season, is protecting your tax return. Now, probably those of you here, most of you have already filed your taxes. And just to mention it, in the news yesterday, the IRS decided to extend the tax filing deadline to May 17th. Utah has also followed suit, so your state tax returns are also not going to be due till May 17th. But again, that's going to also open up the window for identity theft, because a lot of these scammers use that opportunity to beat you to the punch and try to file taxes fraudulently. And you wouldn't find out about it until you filed your taxes and they get rejected. Now, this year, for the first time, what the IRS is allowing taxpayers to do is you can establish an identity protection PIN, and you do that through the IRS website. And then that's just an extra layer of protection that verifies it's actually you before your taxes will be filed. And that was something that used to be only offered to people that were victims of identity theft or fraud, but now it's being offered to all taxpayers. So that tells me that there must be a lot of people that are having their taxes filed fraudulently. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And then another layer of protection is checking your credit reports. That's super important. If you could go to the next slide. You can check your credit report as many times as you want, like we talked about, without having any effect on your score. You will see your own request for checking your credit as a soft inquiry. So it is important to look at inquiries, because if it's something you don't recognize, you're like, I didn't pull my credit report, or I don't know why, just make sure, verify that it's accurate. And so, like Alicia explained, the difference between a hard and a soft inquiry. Hard inquiry is when you're actually applying for a credit card or a loan. You're giving somebody permission to do that, and you'll see that as an inquiry on your credit report. A soft pull would be like you checking your credit report, maybe a credit card that you currently have. They're just doing a check to see if they can increase your credit line. Again, those soft inquiries do not affect your score. Hard inquiries do. They will stay on your credit report for 2 years. And as time passes, the effect of that inquiry just diminishes. The other thing that I wanted to make a point of is that it's important that you check all 3 of your credit reports, not just one. They're making it even easier than ever to check your credit report for free. It used to be once a year you could check your credit report from all 3 credit reporting agencies for free. That is federal law. Now, since April of last year, they let you do it once a week, and that was supposed to expire next month, but they've extended it another year. So you can check your credit report from all 3 credit reporting agencies for free once a week. I'd say, take advantage of it, especially during pandemic. There's so many scams going on right now. Desperate times call for desperate measures. So especially if you're going to be applying for credit, or maybe you're getting ready to buy a house or buy a car or something, you're going to be applying for a loan, I would say keep an extra set of eyes on that. And where you can do that is annualcreditreport.com. That's the one that's federally mandated. I'm just going to put that in the chat. If they ever ask you for a credit, if you go on some website and they're asking you for a credit card or some kind of way to pay for it, or that's not free. Sometimes what they do is they'll get you to sign up for some kind of credit monitoring service that you're not even aware of. So the annualcreditreport.com is the legit one that's free, that's federally mandated. What did I want to say before? There are also lenders and credit. I wanted to mention there are the 3 major credit reporting agencies that provide those credit reports, but those are not the only credit reporting agencies out there. There are others. Lenders will offer you a version of a credit report. Credit card companies, online credit educational tools will provide free reports on demand as well. So I would say if you have access to those and they're free, why not? It's another set of eyes, another place to look at your information. So credit reports, we understand it's important to pull them, it's important to check them, and it doesn't affect your credit score. Now, the next thing I just wanted to go over briefly is how to understand or interpret when you're looking at your credit report. So all of them have these sections. Now, how they're designed is a little bit different. It varies from credit bureau to credit bureau, but they all have the basic same sections. The first one being your personal information. That's usually the first section. And you'll want to review your name. Like when I look at mine, there are misspellings of my name. And I've actually disputed those because that could be either they read my application incorrectly, or if it was something over the phone, or somebody attempted to use my information and didn't really know how to spell my name. So that could be a red flag, and you have the right to dispute that and have them remove it from your credit report. You want to make sure you check addresses. If there's an address on there that you've never lived at, that could be an indication that somebody applied for credit without you knowing about it. Now, not all of your addresses will show up on the credit report. It will only be addresses that you listed on a credit or loan application. Sometimes people say, well, I don't see the address where I've been currently living for 5 years. And I'll say, well, have you applied for credit in the last 5 years, or have you applied for a loan? No. Well, that's probably why it's not showing up on your credit report. So it's important that you check that section. Now, the next section is the actual credit summary. So this will be a summary of all the different types of accounts that you have, including any of them that are delinquent. Usually they change the format of the credit reports over time. But usually now I'm noticing that they're putting anything that's delinquent kind of like at first sight. And it's one of the first things that you see. It's either going to be colored in red or some way to get your attention when you're looking at your credit summary. So if you have any delinquent accounts, or if there's something that doesn't look right, that would be a red flag for you to indicate and do a little bit deeper digging to see what that's about. And then you go into your account history. Like, let's say you see something that's delinquent and you're like, I don't know what that is. Then you go and you look at your accounts history section and you look and see, okay, what is this account about? This is where you would look and see where all your either current credit accounts that you have, or loans that you're paying, or even stuff that you've had in the past that maybe was paid off or you've closed. The key here is that if you don't recognize something in your account summary, it could be a red flag. Now, sometimes I've had clients say that, why is this account on my credit listed as an account? I don't have this. Sometimes people get added as authorized users and don't even realize that they were added as authorized user, because you don't have to have the card to be an authorized user. So I remember I had a client that told me that they worked as a nanny for a family and didn't even realize that they had been added as an authorized user on one of their credit cards. So it would just give you an indication, to further investigate, especially if it's something that you don't recognize, because the likelihood that it's somebody that is using your credit. And somebody made a comment, I believe it was Mary, that familial identity theft is pretty prevalent. As a financial counselor, most of my clients that were victims of identity theft, 95% of them, just in my experience, it was a parent, a brother, a sister, an aunt, uncle, a grandparent that didn't have good credit, but had access to their relatives' information and were opening loans and accounts, using their information. So it's really important that you keep an eye on all of your accounts. The next one, then the other thing that would be on, I want to mention about making sure you check the payment history on your accounts. This is one thing that's unique or specific to COVID. If you have any loans or that are in forbearance, or you've made some kind of new or deferred payment plan, make sure it's not hurting your credit report, because the CARES Act generally requires your creditors to report these accounts as current. The other thing is any accounts that are in collections can remain on your credit report for up to 7 years, even if you've paid off that collection. It's still considered negative. But again, over time, as time passes, the less impact that will have on your overall credit when they calculate your credit score. I also wanted to mention anyone that's going through a divorce or has been a fraud victim has to be extra vigilant. If you've been unable to pay your bills due to the pandemic, or you've had a job loss or a reduction in your hours, and you've made payment arrangements with your creditors, make sure, again, you go back and check and make sure your accounts are in good standing. You can also place a personal statement on your credit reports. And this would be especially helpful in the event you've been a victim of identity theft and you're experiencing ongoing issues with your credit. The other thing is public records. They changed the rules a few years ago. The only thing now that's going to be listed in public records would be a bankruptcy. And then you'll also see that section on your credit report that has inquiries. So this is going to list, this section is going to list all parties that have had access to your credit history in the past 2 years. Again, hard inquiries will drop off after 2 years. Soft inquiries do not affect your credit score. I just will make a brief mention here. If you're shopping for a loan, like a car loan or a mortgage, there will typically be several hits on your credit in a short period of time. So as a general rule, they recommend that you try to keep those inquiries to a 2-week, sometimes a 3-week period. I've heard and read different variations from different financial experts. When you have multiple inquiries for the same thing, for example, you're buying usually one car, you're buying one house, but they may be checking your credit or you're going and shopping around for a loan. Those are supposed to only count as one inquiry if they're done in a short period of time. So if you find that, for example, usually car dealerships are the worst offenders. They will pull your credit many, many times. Especially if you're going back and forth with them or going to different car dealers. Just make sure if you go back and you see that it's been reported multiple times, you have the right to contact that credit reporting agency and say, hey, I was only shopping for one car, one loan, and this car dealership pulled my credit 4 times. So just something to take into consideration. So in summary, if you find any mistakes, contact the credit bureau that is reporting the mistake. Remember, not all creditors report to all 3 credit reporting agencies. That's why it's important that you check all 3. You might find some information on one that you're not finding or not being reported on the others. So wherever you find that mistake, for example, if you found it on your Experian credit report, you go to Experian.com and you go on there and you log into your, you call them or you log into your account. And there's actually a section where you can dispute it. Oftentimes they have forms, like when you pull your credit report, if you were to print it, there's usually a dispute form that's also included as part of that PDF or that file that you print. So it's important that you dispute it and they have 30 days to respond to that. And if you have any information that can support your dispute, definitely include that with your, when you make your dispute with the credit reporting agency. Okay, so if you have, I have not been following the chat, but if there are any questions, do I need to address any questions, Christy Lynn or Jeremy, about your credit report? Did I miss anything? We good? Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy, and she's going to be talking about credit freezes and credit locks.
Okay, so we've so far we've given you a lot of information, right? And we understand that. We had one of you ask if you could get a copy of this presentation. Yes, we will send you a copy of this presentation in a follow-up email. You'll also get a recording with that email, so you can watch it again if you wish to do that. So we talked about identity theft, how it happens, you know, what you can do to protect yourself. One of those things is, you know, with the taxes now, you can, the IRS is, you know, is giving this opportunity to have a PIN for everyone, not just people who've been victims of identity fraud and then identity theft. And then now you know how to read your credit. So now you can identify, ooh, that's a red flag. Let me dispute that. So now you're more able to protect yourself because you know what's in there and you know what's wrong and what's accurate. So you're able to clean that up if necessary. Now, credit freezes, we like to think of it as a prevention. And it's, you know, prevention is always better than cure, right? So what does it do? So in a credit freeze, you call the credit bureaus and you tell them, I want to freeze my credit, right? And what does it do? It prevents others from accessing your credit information. It prevents others from opening new credit in your name. It is free of charge with all 3 credit bureaus. It's governed by federal law and losses are legally protected. What does it mean? Okay, what does this all mean? This means that when you get your credit frozen, you're the only one who can tell the credit bureaus to thaw it. Okay, and when it's thawed, then people can now access your credits when you're, say, you're shopping for a loan, you're buying a car, or you're trying to get pre-approved for a loan, or you're trying to refinance. Okay, unless you go and tell the credit bureaus to lift the freeze, nobody can access your credit information and nobody can open any credit in your name. Okay, unless this is an exception for that is, say, a government agency wants to see it because there's a court order or it's been subpoenaed or there's a search warrant for whatever reason. It's the only time that a credit freeze will be thawed without you telling the credit bureaus to thaw it. Okay, it also does not prevent your creditors or debt collectors from accessing your credit report. Okay, so doing this prevents others from accessing your credit information and opening new credit in your name unless, the government wants it for some reason, and there's a good reason for them to ask for it, and your existing creditors needs access to your credit report. Okay, it doesn't also stop pre-screen credit offers. You might still get those in the mail, but there's a workaround for that. I'm blanking on that website. Opt-out screen, is that the website? Yes.
Opt-out pre-screen.
Opt-out pre-screen. If we could put that in the chat. If you don't want to deal with all those mailers, go to that website. Tell them, I'm done with this. I don't want this in my mailbox. I don't want this in my life. It's another piece of paper. And then that's the workaround for that. Also, your credit freeze will not prevent you from getting your free annual credit report. It will not keep you from opening a new account. It's the credit report that's frozen. Nobody can access that, right? But it doesn't stop you from applying for a new credit, right? But when you apply and people need to see your credit report, you have to unthaw it. Okay. It doesn't keep you from applying for a job, renting an apartment, or buying insurance. Okay, so remember that. Okay, that's a credit freeze. Now, what's a credit lock? Some people might think these are the same things, but they're not. Okay, if these are some of the differences. If you remember from that list from that previous slide, the first two things, they're the same. They do the same thing, except for credit locks, you'd have to pay for it. It's not governed by federal law. So whatever the rules are for that specific credit bureau who you put a credit lock with, then you go by those rules. It also does not require a PIN and can be unlocked instantly. They have apps that you could just swipe. Okay, it's locked, swipe again. It's not locked anymore. Okay, so it's more convenient for people. And one other reason why the credit bureaus prefer that you lock instead of freeze is they can still sell your market, still sell and market your information. Okay, they can do that. So that's those are the main differences between a credit freeze and a credit lock. So if you want to, ideally you would freeze your credit instead of lock, just because it's generally recommended and it's free. First of all, it's federally regulated. Okay, there's a federal law that protects you when your credit is frozen, as opposed to when there's a credit lock. For example, you only had a lock, you didn't freeze it, and somebody opens an account in your name. The credit bureaus can say, well, that's not our fault. They can say that. It depends. How they lock your information is dependent on their own policies and not dependent on a federally regulated policy. So that's the biggest difference with freezing versus locking. So if you want to do this is how you do it. Also, if for Experian, you go to their website, their security freeze hub, and then you sign up and you pay $24.99 a month. For that's for lock. Okay, to freeze, it's free. Okay, if you want a lock, and you could get both, you can get a freeze, you can get a lock. It depends on you. But if you choose a lock with Experian, you pay $24.99 a month. Okay. For Equifax, to put a freeze on your credit, you go onto the credit report services page, or you can call this number, or you can send a mail-in request to this address. Okay. And the same way, if you want to unfreeze it, you have to contact them. They have different time, what do you call it, windows before they could unfreeze it. And then you call them again if you want to freeze it again. Say, for example, you're shopping for a car, or you're getting pre-approved for a mortgage loan. And of course, you want lenders to have access to your credit report. So you would have to call them to thaw it. Okay. If you want to lock with Equifax, you go to their lock alert page. They as of today, they don't charge any monthly fee. Okay. With
I would read the fine print.
I know. I
I would advise everybody to read the fine print. You never know.
Yeah. Fine print. That's why they're fine. That's why they're teeny, tiny, because they don't want you to read it, but read it. Okay. Then TransUnion. This is go to their website, their credit freeze page, or call this 888 number. If you want to lock, this is interesting. And we were talking about this earlier, why with TransUnion, if you pay $24.95 a month, you can lock both your Equifax and your TransUnion report. For some reason, they got into business of locking together. But if you only want to lock Equifax, you don't pay. If you want to lock both Equifax and TransUnion, you pay $24.95 a month. So it's a service that you pay for. So if you ask me, I would freeze instead of lock, just because of the more advantages to it and more protection, especially because it's federally regulated.
And when you freeze your credit, if you're going to be applying for a loan or a credit card, you need to know which credit they're going to pull from. Like if you have all of them frozen, you need to know, like some, for example, a car dealership, maybe they have a contract with Equifax and they pull all Equifax credit reports, when qualifying their customers for a loan. So you'll want to find out, who your lender or creditor is working with. And so you just go and you unfreeze that particular one.
Okay, so again, this is like one other layer of protection. If you want to be super, super protected, and I was working on this presentation yesterday, I was looking at my door and I was like, okay, sometimes you could just lock it and sometimes you can bolt it. So it just depends on how much protection you want. Like we said, you can both lock it and freeze it. You can you can keep checking your scores. Like we said, even if it's on freeze, you can check your report because that's yours. Like the freeze would not stop you from doing that. Okay. Now,
and I can tell you from personal experience, having been a victim of identity theft, I tend to be more vigilant because I'm paranoid now. That's why I pay for identity theft protection, just because emotionally it was devastating.
Yeah, it gives you serious PTSD when it's your identity, not just your, think about it, it's not just your financial history that's been hacked. It's your identity, to be quite honest here. Somebody's using your name and using your history to do whatever they want, and that's quite traumatizing. And sometimes even with some of the most protections that we get, identity theft can still happen, right? And if it does, this is where you go to report that. Go to the Federal Trade Commission and identitytheft.gov. This is their website, and I found it interesting here. I think this is they're plugging this unemployment insurance identity theft, just because a lot of more people are claiming unemployment insurance because of the pandemic. And it's sad that people are using other people's identity to get money that's not theirs. So just and taxes, we just saw in the comments that somebody's sister had their taxes filed fraudulently. That's that's really low. If somebody wants to pay my tax bill, but if you're getting a refund, I mean, and it gets really, really complicated, especially if you want your identity back.
Yeah, and now you know that somebody's got your information. If they were able to file taxes on your behalf, that means they have your information. So I
Mhm.
hope that your sister put a fraud alert on her credit reports
Yes.
and reported it. That I think that's a really important first step. Of
Do
course,
you,
freezing your credit reports.
yes. So with all these information, and we know these are a lot, um, we are happy that you joined us today. If you have any questions that we have not addressed yet, please put them in the chat and we'd love to address them. Just check that here. Oh, Kimberly said that her sister was getting a big refund. I am not. I
I'm
am.
glad to hear that Kimberly's sister,
Yeah.
yeah, did what she needed to do. Yeah, it's scary. And it just seems to be getting worse. And I'm not trying to, fear factor in here or create any kind of, it's just that with technology, that's just I feel like it's just the way of the world where we just have to be, technology is wonderful, but
Yes.
we also just have to be really, really vigilant about protecting our own information.
It can be your friend or your foe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I haven't filed my taxes yet either because my husband's been out of the country. So I'm like, hurry up already. Let's get this done.
Yeah, and plus with the extension, I mean, we're glad that they extended it for people who need the extension. But if you can, work on it now.
Yeah.
Just because, people are prying and waiting for the perfect victim to use their identity on their behalf. So if you don't have any more questions, would like to let you know that we're glad that you're able to join us today. Would love to hear your feedback. If you could complete our 2-minute survey, this is the link to that survey, and you can also scan this QR code and it will take you straight to that survey, which will enter you into a drawing. If you've attended multiple webinars with us, if it would be so appreciative if you completed a survey for each of those webinars, since they're different content, just so we could improve our courses. We'd love to improve our courses, and we'd love to share information that's helpful, that's relevant, and something that's needed in the community. If you haven't joined us on our social media platforms yet, we invite you to come follow us. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter at Utah Money Moms. We are also having this awesome conversations, and we're sharing insights, tips, and tricks on financial wellness on our blog, utahmoneymoms.com. If you want to attend more of our webinars, we are polishing our webinar series for the summer, May, June, July. So watch out for those. But we have all of April set up. We have a lot of financial spring cleaning going on in April, and we'll talk about that in our April webinars. So go to finance.usu.edu/EFW to register. Also, if you're in Utah and you want to you can host a free class for your community. We'll come and teach it. We'll bring the resources, we'll bring the materials, we'll teach the class for you. Go to that same website, finance.usu.edu/EFW, and we have an intake form for you, and we could start that process and we could get this wonderful financial wellness information to your community. We are appreciative that you are here with us today. We hope that these information were helpful and that you can use it in your financial goals. We thank you for joining us today. Have a great day, everybody.